Shinji and Warhammer40k. Chapter 8. A Farewell to Peace. Part 1. It was, as to be expected, a dark room. Dark figures with dark designs deigned to discuss their dire directives despite the distance. SEELE was scattered all over the world, but in this manner they could meet almost face to face. This was better even, for though they must work together, there were certain members of the group that had sworn to kill each other on sight. It had been 15 years since these people caused Second Impact, and the scope of their failure weighed heavily upon them through the years. They were not evil men and women, at least not as they viewed themselves. All they wanted was godhood, and an end for all of humanity's ails and pains and harmful little thoughts. Having prepared beforehand, they rose into positions of uncontested influence in the post-impact years. After all that time, it was again the moment to begin anew. Fate is foretold. Humanity would make their own gods and never again bow to the illusions of belief. "Ikari has learned well," said one of SEELE. "In times of great upheaval, should it not be the perfect time for a Messiah to arise?" "But which is which? Is it the time of crisis caused by its appearance, or is it merely a symptom of inescapable change?" replied another. Faces, voices, identities, these were immaterial to SEELE. After all, like their name implied, the most important part was the soul. Of course, the chairman was easy to recognise, with his visor the only thing allowing him to see. His voice, too, was distinctive, being the voice behind the operation. It's perhaps ironic that this man, so unashamed of his identity and infirmities, was the one most eager to lose it. "There is a saying, to defeat a leader, you must shoot his horse," he said. "Ikari is moving faster than we had anticipated. We ourselves must move faster still, or find some way of slowing him down." "The scrolls do not speak of this," added yet another SEELE member. "The scrolls leave much to interpretation. Mankind is the one to decide its own destiny. This is what is clear in the texts." It was a bright room. Misato walked in to see Shinji apparently modifying a chainsaw into some form of chain sword. "Isn't that dangerous?" she asked. "Not really. This makes it easier for me to cut things vertically. That's why I put this guard here, to keep sawdust from flying into my face." Misato smiled. Shinji never ran out of ways to surprise her. "I really wouldn't have believed it, Shin-chan, but carpentry suits you." Maybe he'd grow some muscles out of it. Ooh, sweaty labour. She could just imagine it in a few years later. "What are you building up on the roof, anyway?" Every day, the pilot went up to the building's roof and worked there in isolation. There was a big tent up there, where him, Toji and Kensuke spent time as if camping. The other two boys brought in wood and notebooks by the armload. It was also very mysterious. It was boys' club stuff. The little girl in Misato didn't really care, except to feel some indignation in being so obviously excluded. Shinji looked up and frowned. "It's hard to explain, Misato-san. Many things, really. Most are just scale models. I could show you, but I'd rather let it remain a surprise." Sure, whatever makes you happy." She was very permissive. Not just because Shinji was saviour of the world, but that because he was unlikely to do anything that would betray her trust. After she shut the door, she leaned back against it as if tired. Misato swirled round the beer in the can she held in her hand. "Do I still really need this?" She took a sip. "Please, don't hurt me, Shinji. Don't go away." They were both soldiers in a war, and both knew that not everyone survives. "Stay for a while." "I hate them," she thought again about the angels. "They're just going to keep taking it all away. Oh, Shin-chan, I hope I die before you. I hope I don't want to keep hurting this way." Inside, Shinji finished the modifications to turn his mini chainsaw into a mini ripper. "Now that's just fine," he said, showing it off to the remaining miniatures. "Behold your new form, machine spirit." "Be blessed in the name of the Emperor," said the Space Marine. "Be blessed by the anger of the machine spirit. May your bite bring his rage. May your roar echo his wrath." I'm mostly going to use it to chop wood. Chop wood in righteous anger, then. In the Emperor's name, may they be torn into pieces, suitable for reassembly. Let them come together in praise of his will. I used to sound like that, you should know, said the Chaos Marine. Some people would ask, why chaos? Why? Why risk disfigurement and mutation? And I answer, look at those and ask yourselves, why in the hell's not? I would shoot them. Yes, that tends to sum up their reservations. Whereupon I would stab them. They would feed the gods of chaos either way. Before they could get at each other again, Shinji let out a long sigh. He walked over to his window and stared out at Tokyo 3. After a long while, its residents had finally managed to rebuild most of it. We've come a long way, haven't we? He said. Since those innocent days back at the beach. I can't even see the ocean from here. He revved up the chainsaw in his hand and lifted it as if in salute to the city. Then he shut it off and looked at it in his grip. It felt so right. Those hollow days. Have I ever really lived before I found you? Shinji turned to the three. I wonder what I would have been like if I hadn't. Would I still have protected this city? Would I have caused so much suffering? You have grown since then. You have grown strong, my young king. And I must be even more worthy of that strength. He turned to the Farseer. You were the one who never gave me a title. Until now. Why? We are Eldar, and we bow so easily to no one. Were her hair not in a helmet, she would toss it contemptuously over her shoulder. Now, young king, you deserve it. This city is yours and shall serve your purposes well. I want to protect this city and safeguard the happiness of its people. Shouldn't it be the opposite? I serve them. And well indeed do they owe you your allegiance. Such is the burden of a king. He was already a bright lord before this, Eldar. He has been promoted. Does this mean he is no longer your pawn, witch? Asked the Space Marine. Will you now give the commander guidance without advancing your own desires? The king is the most important piece of the game. If he dies, the game ends. So I would counsel you now, Shinji. Be wary. Be most wary. You are a young king, and the old king sits uneasy on his throne. You mean my father? That dark light, yes. Is he not why you remain in this city? Shinji laughed. It's been weeks since I thought of my father. Well, it's true that I came to this city because of him. It's not for his approval that I stay. I love this city. I love its people. I love them not like a king or father, or as a son unto them. My father's no longer significant. I'll waste no more scenarios on him. I haven't forgiven him, but in time the hatred may fade. Then what is it that is most important to you now, Bright Lord? Asked the Chaos Marine with odd eagerness. What do you desire now, if not revenge? What do you see, if not his ruin? I see the glory of man. Look, I see their spirit. Death will come to those who would try and destroy that spirit. The Space Marine bowed. In the name of Principio Eternus. This places you even more firmly under your father's thumb, warned the Chaos Marine. Know well how easily good faith can be twisted. Yes, you would know, hissed the Space Marine. I can't rely on my father, Shinji replied. I've always known that. Therefore I made plans to protect my people my own way. This pleased the Farseer immensely, for a variety of reasons. The king is greatest when he does not stand alone. Those around you shall craft that victory. Your queen is powerful, and enemies shall shrink from her approach. My queen? Misato-san? How long has it been since you tried to see into what may come? You have all but abandoned the human element in your visions. These are my friends. These are my new family. They're not tools to me. Shinji could feel her opened arms, submissive bow in his mind. There are lessons you need to learn, she said, and these I cannot teach you. He looked out the window and was content. Although, the Farseer continued, yes, there are no kingly lessons I could teach you. However, it pleases me little that you sent the orc with the girl. Would it not be more proper if I was to instruct her? There is still yet time to introduce me into her service." "No," said 3 male thoughts at once, as one. "She is a girl, I am a woman. This is what is proper, not some dirty old orc. This is an outrage against my gender." "Still no," insisted the 3, "and one more time, hell no. Better a dirty old orc than a very dirty old woman." She lifted her arms up in frustration. "Why am I so unluckily always surrounded by prudes?" These were the days of Shinji Ikari in Tokyo 3. He could finally go to school again and meet his friends. Toji and Hikari were overzealous in protecting his privacy. He managed to make a few more friends, but what warmed his heart the most was seeing Rei develop a few of her own. The other girls had little in common with the blue-haired girl, but at least the snide remarks and hostile envy had vanished. She was even seen to smile on her own on occasion, and of course the fan club immediately sprang into being. More disturbing than the Shinji fan club and the Rei fan club was the Shinji and Rei Forever fan club. Of course, even if she didn't go to school, Mai Ibuki was a card-carrying member of that club. The night belonged to Shinji. It was the only time he could go out and be reasonably sure he wouldn't get gawked at. One night, he and Toji went out to the playground near Kaname Primary School and rented a good bit of vandalism. Morning saw scrawled on the concrete a strange face lined in red paint. It seemed to be like a skull with an oversized toothy jaw. It wasn't scary though, as by its eyes it seemed to be winking. The children seemed to love it, and because of that the grown-ups decided to let it stay for a while. Children danced around it, followed the lines with their feet. It was so cute how they'd skip around it as like a conga line, singing "Gretz, Gretz, Gretz, Gretch, Gretz, 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 Gretch." A few days later, no one was even paying any attention to it. Children at play altogether could quickly become tiring just to watch. Toji and Shinji watched from behind the tree. "Why are we even bothering with these kids?" Toji asked. "I thought you wanted to lie low." "Don't underestimate them. These kids, their tenacity, their boundless energy." Shinji smiled. He had on a baseball cap and wide sunglasses. He wore athletic gear similar to that of Toji's, in this way appearing contrary to the mental image people had of him. Someone who, outside of the Evangelion, had very little interest in physical pursuits could simply not be that baseball player the athletic Suzuhara seen loafing around with. Okay. Like you said, this is where Akari's sister goes to. I don't know. Would she be angry with getting her sister involved in this?" "Probably," Shinji shrugged. "Depends. There are other advantages to this." He grinned secretively, with his eyes crinkled shut. "Go on. I'll wait for you at that bench over there." "But they're kids, Toji. Why are you so afraid?" All right, stop poking." Toji approached the shrieking band of neo-primitives with trepidation. When they stopped and eerily turned their heads in unison to stare at him, he nearly fled. He scratched his chin and laughed weakly. Hi," he said. "Who are you?" one of the kids asked. "I'm Toji Suzuhara. Is Hiraki Nozomi here? I go to class with her sister." Out from the throng emerged a little girl, her hair in twin ponytails. She didn't have the freckles of her elder sisters, but shed their prim, disapproving looks. She squinted up at him and said, "I know him. It's that idiot Bakatoji." "Bakatoji!" the children all shouted at once. "Bakatoji! Bakatoji!" "Shh!" Toji made frantic gestures. "Damn it, you brats!" Can't strangle them. Might make Shinji unhappy. They'll go blabbing to Inquisitor Hiraki. "Shut up!" They pointed and laughed and began to dance around him. They kept singing Bakatoji, securing their invulnerability. "Damn Gretchen!" he shouted. They all stopped. Nozomi approached him, her pigtail quivering in indignation. "You're not one of the boys. Now where did you learn that? Talk, you squig!" Hey, don't you go threatening me, little girl." "Gretchen, close ranks and prepares to attack! By the book!" A frenzied yell erupted from the children, and they hurriedly brought themselves into 3 lines. They made cute little growling noises and quickly surrounded the teen. Okay. Toji held his hands up in surrender. "Look, I don't know anything, all right? I'm just a messenger. Someone told me to say this. The word goes with the Gretsch. The Grets go with the boys. The boss is waiting for the boys. Look, just come with me so we can explain it, huh?
I don't know about this,
a little boy mumbled.
We're not supposed to go anywhere with strangers. Where are we going?
Nozomi asked. You're not gonna know until you get there. The little girl nodded. Good enough. She and two boys followed Toji to the nearby back-to-back benches, though away from view of most of the street. Sitting relaxed in one of the benches facing away from the street was someone whistling a simple but familiar tune. He turned his head and lifted his cap slightly. Hello, Gretchen, he said with a grin.
Holy crap!
One of the primary schoolers yelled, then slapped his hands over his lips as Shinji made a shh gesture.
It's Shinji-sama.
Shinji touched his forehead and then his wrist, in the boy's gesture for act normal. The three children sat down on the bench behind him, relaxed and humming, kicking their legs. Nozomi lifted her hands and made like swimming motions, in the Gretsch gesture for provide distraction. The children grew louder at play. Toji, feeling rather creeped out, moved away towards a tree. My name's Shinji, said the pilot, while looking up at the sky. May I know your names?
I'm Nozomi,
was her reply, bobbing her head from side to side as if listening to music.
These are my friends Aki and Sugo.
I'm pleased to meet you, Aki-kun, Sugo-kun, Nozomi-chan. A few moments in entirely too casual silence passed. How are me boys doing? Shinji asked.
Your boys? Woo! You're the boss? Wow, yeah!
She grinned.
Who else is good enough to be the boss?
She shook her head at her friends, that they should resist the urge to turn around.
The boys are itching for a scrap, boss.
Tokyo 3's different. I see they managed to set up a Gretz network anyway. Boys and Gretchen, I need your help. Anything, boss, said the boys. This is the word. I need the Gretsch to pass it from me to the people around me and then to the boys. I'm going to need you to carry some things now and then from one part of the city to another. Don't worry, it's nothing dangerous. Pah! They were hoping for something more exciting. Remember, as usual, the adults must not know. Remember the code of the Gretchen.
We does stuff they see and don't see. The Gretchen are the little ones and smarter than the big uns.
Toji is a sister. She's about your age and she's sick at the hospital. Teach her how to be a Gretsch. It's lonely up there and she needs friends. She's going to be Toji's Gretsch, and if you pass word to her, it's going to reach my ears. Likewise, word from her comes from me. Nozomi, you're your sister's Gretsch. It would be best if she doesn't know about this for a while. Toji or Kensuke can find some excuse to visit her and give word to you. It's simple, but it's important. This city needs your eyes, your ears, and your little legs. Do you get it, Gretchen?
We get it, boss.
Then this is the word from me. There's a little house somewhere behind Sumiri Street that isn't being used. It has the mark on a place no one but the boys will look. Here. He put a key on the bench backrest. Is the key. The boys can use it as their hut. It's already got electricity and running water. Like always, what the boys know is for the boys only. This is my gift to yous. You can always wonder if there's trouble. Keep it secret from the rest of the kids unless they really needs it.
What?
Nozomi turned around and took the key.
Thank you, boss.
Now go on. Have fun. The children left the bench to join the others. Their word passed quickly but discreetly. Shinji left, ambling along with his hands in his pockets. Toji followed quickly. What was that all about? He asked. This whole business was creepy. They're just children, Shinji. What do you hope to accomplish with these children? Shinji walked on. Phones are very convenient, aren't they, Toji? The other teen looked confused, but Shinji didn't continue. After a while, he made an affirmative answer. It was only then that Shinji explained further, his tone like a teacher to a student. Phones allow us to communicate with almost anyone. They allow us to share our concerns and relay messages all over the world near instantaneously. It's one of the landmark inventions of human civilization. It brings the entire world closer. The two boys ducked into an alley to let a large group of other students pass by, and at the same time separates them. Under the shadows of the alley, Shinji paused in his lecture and continued it only when they were walking again. It reduces people to numbers. You need to know what that other number is to contact them. Its utility can sometimes make people forget that the phone and the amount of numbers within it can be the goal unto itself. It is but humanity's tool, and humanity must not let itself be swallowed by its promise. The true promise of the invention lies not in itself, but in who uses them. So, what, are you saying phones are bad? Shinji laughed. Of course not. I'm saying phones make things too easy. He looked up to see they were approaching the hospital where Toji's sister lay. People can forget that conversation doesn't actually mean communication. In the convenience of its use, people can forget that they do not hold the power of its tool. It lies upon those that provide the link between the two phones. Therefore, when this is cut, they can do nothing. When their conversations are no longer private, they are not aware of it. And when it's gone, they've no way of knowing about what the other's doing. They were inside an elevator. Toji wondered about this side of Shinji that he'd never seen before. Almost anonymous under his garb, Shinji seemed freer somehow, and expressed himself as like someone else. Someone older, wiser, and more cunning. In hiding his face, he had hidden too his normal, self-imposed limitations. Toji felt himself stand up straighter. He could almost feel himself get smarter just from listening in. As Shinji believed him capable of detecting the subtle nuances, so did the other teen hoping himself. So the children are our backup plan? They're how we can communicate when we can't use the phones? I don't know. Seems kind of too complicated to be useful. Maybe. It's not an instant system, but how many children are there in this city? Toji shrugged. A lot, I think. People aren't numbers. People are faces, habits, places. If I need to reach someone, I don't need to memorize numbers. Everyone either has someone in school, knows someone who has a child, or just walks by a street where a child may play. Children are unpredictable. They're also assumed to be innocent. There are no innocents. There's only degrees of guilt. And these children can perform tasks invisible even under plain sight. No one thinks it odd if a child puts something in a drink can and kicks it aside. No one thinks it odd if a child jumps into a bush for no apparent reason. No one thinks it odd if they would just spontaneously follow an adult around, imitating what he's doing. It amazes me what they can accomplish on their own. What we have, Toji, is a completely untapped and unpredictable system of knowing what each other is doing. Won't they just tell their parents if asked? They could tell them, and it would give the questioners nothing. For a child's logic skews the message beyond what it really is. It's the word from a child to a child, and completely incomprehensible to anyone except them. I don't encourage them to remember exact messages, just the overall idea. It is harmless, until it reaches those who share the same ideas. Toji winced. Yep, definitely creepy. Shinji, I don't like it. Putting children to work for us seems wrong somehow. They're not meant for this cloak and dagger shit. It's not spying, it's just playing. It's not message delivery, but a relay race. Shinji turned and smiled to him, his eyes still hidden under the brim of his baseball cap. And there's also a very important benefit to this arrangement. What's that? How often do you get to visit your sister, Toji? How many children does she get to play with? What does she know of the world outside? It's got to be lonely to be stuck in this place. The Gretch will visit her often and tell her stories of the boys. She can make new friends without having her endure the pain of moving outside. I can just see her, reading to those who can't read, giggling to their exploits. How long has it been since this place heard the sound of children's laughter? Toji's eyes widened. The doors opened with a ding. Shinji. And this gives you even more reason to visit Hiraki-san. Visit often. Shinji stepped out, walking a bit faster, a mischievous half-smile ever present on his face, so utterly out of character for those who knew him, and further enhanced his disguise. Toji followed quickly, looking indignant. Hey, what do you mean by that? Hey, come on, man. Nothing's going on with me in class rep. Toji, lie to yourself if you must, but not to me. Ketsuke and I can both see what's going on. He continued walking. Toji, please know that if you don't appreciate Hiraki-san's affections for you, either Kusuke or I will woo her away from you. That struck him numb. What? We're your friends and her friends as well. We can see what you see in her. Shinji stopped at the door to Marie's room and turned around, that odd smile still there.
You both complete each other. I don't know if she'd be able to handle this life I'm going to lead, and if Kensuke she'd end up mothering him more than acting as a girlfriend. But we'll try our hardest to make her happy."
"Well, if that's what you guys really feel about it."
"Told you she needs you. This isn't the time for stupid self-sacrifice. Guard her happiness as well. With the support of her sister, perhaps she won't think of you so much of the Baka Toji. She knows you. I can see what she sees in you. She just needs the courage and support to admit it to herself." The other teen said nothing. He moved over to a wall and punched it. He looked up and his face was grimacing.
"So this was all to set us up, huh? What makes you think you can just decide our feelings for us?"
"I'm not deciding anything for you. It's incidental and it's good. The children will be happy in their new pastime. Your sister will be happy with her new friends, and you and Haraki-san. All of your happiness is important to me."
"Damn it, Shinji, you can't just..."
Toji breathed out sharply.
"Just how many levels do you work in anyway?"
Shinji looked up, and as sunlight streamed through the window to light up his face, Shinji saw there that his friend, for a brief moment, looked so lost, so alone and frightened. "I don't even know anymore," was the reply. Rei knew contentment. In this way, the one she did not remember was correct. In her was nirvana. When without orders, she merely stayed and waited in her room, only moving when it was time to eat or bathe. In this way, the hollow days of her life passed slowly and without notice. Rei knew fascination. She could watch the clock and simply follow its passing. There was always plenty of time. Now, however, time seemed to just speed up. Time itself lost meaning. She was hungry and she found it hard to move away. She knew pain, but this was the first time she disliked the limitations of her fleshy body. Rei knew happiness. She could feel her lips twitching as she was reading. She'd always learned well when taught, and had long already absorbed whatever lessons were at school. Were it not for a lack of participation, her grades would be perfect. However, learning for herself was something she'd never anticipated. By Gork and Mork. She looked up at the war boss on her desk. She hadn't rid herself of Commander Akari's broken glasses, but she had to admit the figure was made for a much more impressive display. Just its presence alone filled the room with a certain vibrance. She carefully turned another page. Many times had she read the book, over and over again, deep into the night. In her dreams she was still reading them. That deep old presence that she knew was Lilith seemed so very far away, walled off and screaming in futility.
"The orcs are the pinnacle of creation,"
whispered Rei.
"For them the great struggle is won. They have evolved a society which knows no stress or angst. Who are we to judge them, we Eldar who have failed, or the humans on the road to ruin in their turn? And why? Because we sought answers to question an orc wouldn't even bother to ask. We see a culture that is strong and despise it as crude."
Lilith was silent.
"The purpose of life is never questioned. For an orc, whatever he's doing at the time is meaning enough. Orcs do not have many worries and do not even know what an aspiration is. Very few orcs are ambitious. If an orc observes that others around him are taking notice and doing what he says, he'll just exploit the situation as far as he can. In this way, he might end up as a warlord without ever having set out to gain power."
Rei closed the book and touched it to her forehead. There was this feeling rising in her, an emotion she couldn't identify. It was like happiness, only more. She felt so light. It made sense. It made utter complete sense. Pilot Ikari was correct. He didn't simply tell her. He showed her. He gave her meaning. He was indeed worthy of her respect. She was indeed an orc. All her life she was one and did not know it. The purpose in the now. It is enough. Lilith was fearful.
"Ain't yous bored yet?"
asked the raw boss.
"I do not believe so,"
Rei replied. Shinji had said for her to exercise her imagination. She'd seared the codex contents into her memories, and day after day for weeks it was all she knew. The same thing over and over again. She could keep doing that for even years.
"This is enough. These are the moments for me."
"You sure?"
"I am sure."
The war boss laughed.
Me girl, I'm talking to ya. I'm talking through yous thoughts. I says I'm bored, then yous bored too. You can't be an orc just by reading. We's the orcs! You thinks we got so far by reading? Orcs are made for fighting!
Rei put aside the book.
"Fighting? Must I fight as well?"
You wants to be an orc, right?
Ray nodded.
Then let me see you stomp on something.
Ray stood up and waited. Seeing a cockroach trying to cross the floor, she lifted her right leg high up, showing a goodly bit of skin, and crunched that roach under her heel. It was an unpleasant feeling, and for a second she considered going, ew. Ray wiped off roach goop with one of her old bloody bandages.
That was pathetic, grumbled the war boss. Stomping's not just something you do, it's what you feel that makes it a true stomping.
I do not know what to feel.
Maybe you needs better things to stomp. Let's go out to stomp some grots.
Grots? Ray tilted her head to the side. Gretchens? There were no Gretchens around. She searched for a deeper definition. Bad Gretchen? Or undesirable elements of the population? She could feel the war boss's eager nod. Ray carefully put aside her books, and then even more carefully picked up the war boss to place in her pockets. She shut her door and turned the key on her shiny new lock Shinji had given her. In the past, she was unconcerned, as there was nothing at all in her dingy apartment worth the effort of stealing. However, now that she had these books, they were precious to her. The office was dark, lit only by the cabalistic display up on the ceiling. Gendo sat there in his usual pose, where Itsuko had to stand a distance away in the centre of the room. It was all so precisely intimidating, and even her logical scientific part had to admit it was effective.
The pilot synchronization ratios are holding at an effectively high level.
She made her report, only occasionally glancing at the papers in her hand. She knew while Gendo was well capable of interpreting data on his own, he relied on her to illuminate emerging patterns.
The Evangelions themselves show nothing unusual in both control behaviour or physical properties.
Then how do you explain the jet alone incident, Dr. Akagi? Ritsuko shrugged. She really wished she could sit. In his own way, Gendo was punishing her for deviating from the scenario without making it overt.
The AT field. There's still a lot we don't know about it. Much of what we know further now have been from the efforts of the third child. As much as it frightens me,
and it did,
the AT field doesn't seem to have a functional limitation. It does whatever he needs it to do at the time.
This didn't please Gendo. Can it be replicated with other pilots, other Evangelions?
Theoretically, yes. We haven't attempted to do the same things with Rei, due to the possible risk of her having her oversync with the Evangelion.
Gendo nodded slightly. This might be useful later on. How is Rei's synchronization rating?
Surprisingly high. It doesn't have Shinji's wild swings up and down, but on average nearly matches his. Any more and we'd have to be looking at contamination between her and the Eva.
Interesting. Does this have any relation to her closeness to the third child? Now this was the question she'd been dreading. The answer was a simple yes, but by her evaluation, it would be Gendo who would decide if it was beneficial or not. As much as the prospect of Mini Gendo and Mini Yu getting together disturbed her, the womanly part of her was just giddy in knowing it would severely piss off Gendo and his plans. Shinji was so much like Gendo it wasn't funny. What was funny was how he was better at it. Destroying and looting Jet Alone's resources in one swoop was something beyond the Elder Akari's reach. Where he gathered power through favours old and blackmail, the other bought it with common pride and loyalty. Ritsuko could feel it. One day there would be a truly titanic clash. Nerve might not survive. She dearly wished to live to see it.
Yes, she answered. Her identification with the piloting attitude of the third child can only be beneficial. Rei has always been obedient, but never had she really tried to surpass the limits of what she can do. Morale had always been considered a non-issue with her, but she seems more willing now to obey orders. As always, it's better to do a task with the idea of succeeding than simply because one is told to.
Has her interaction with the third reached a level of physical influence? Ritsuko frowned.
Are you asking me if Rei is still a virgin?
Silence upon Gendo's end.
Then yes, Rei is a virgin. Shinji hasn't touched her.
It must irk you if someone else should get at that first.
It all looks rather platonic. Cute, even.
He frowned at that. Shinji was an incidental portion of his scenarios. Rei was the crucial part. All the boy did was add another layer of control. With SEELE working openly, he had to consider what this meant for Rei. He could simply have her replaced, but then he could lose the effectiveness of her synchronization with the Eva. There are still yet more angels that must be defeated according to the scrolls. It was written the boy would defeat them. She would stand with him. It was also quite clear that she would be someone who could die and yet not die, live and yet not be living. And the opposite? How is Rei affecting the third child?
You heard it. Shinji can get rather outspoken. He swore to protect her, and I don't believe he's likely to back down from that boyish promise.
Boyish? Hell, she could see its effect on Maya. That was a man's promise. This was acceptable. It doesn't matter what the boy did, as long as he still had Rei to provide the control needed. The boy doesn't know how Rei could be replaced, so a few threats to her well-being should be enough. Gendo's main problem, therefore, was to preserve Rei from SEELE. Fortunately, her nature was such that she had little to fear from humanity. Gendo dismissed Ritsuko, as he was tiring of seeing her. She was still useful, but also slowly becoming more and more belligerent as she thought herself indispensable. No one is. This was something she should have already learned. While in nerve, his position was unassailable. Now, how to strike back at the old farts? Shinji over the month had made 3 more calls, 2 to his hometown and 1 to the number given to him by the JSSDF. He sent 2 parcels by mail, 1 back to his uncle's place and another to the Jet Alone Labs. It was night, and Kensuke was nervous. Skulking around was suspicious behaviour if seen, and that was precisely the point. They were trying not to be seen. He and Shinji had even worn dark clothes for the occasion. They ran through dark alleys and kept to the shadows. The few policemen and gang thugs that they saw, they avoided silently. Shinji's status wouldn't save them, but only heightened the trouble. Finally, they came to an inaccessible back door of a shop under construction.
Say, is this alright? Breaking in, you know?
It was a thrill, yes, but didn't want to be thrown in jail. Stop breaking in if we have the key. The door opened easily. Shinji flicked a nearby switch. The inside was a mess. Walls were half painted, dust and small blocks of wood were everywhere, tubs of paint left lying around, and over a crude bench were a bunch of workmen's tools. It looked as if construction was abandoned in a hurry as workers butted heads with the boss, but might also resume at any time. It was an empty place, unworthy of notice. Thick shutters locked the main door and windows. It had many secure locks and thick doors, but the insides had nothing to offer any thief. Shinji made his way past the mess over to the back, where there were 4 doors facing each other in a blocked-off hallway. The 2 doors on the left were marked with the male and female symbols, obviously restrooms. Kensuke pushed open the female door out of curiosity, but inside was bare concrete. The 2 other doors were unmarked. The unmarked door farthest from the entrance was locked, and it was that they entered. Inside was storage, full of boxes and crates. Kensuke helped Shinji move aside some of the boxes to reveal a metal trapdoor, yet again locked. This one was marked with, "Danger! Electricity!" The glasses-wearing boy held back his misgivings as Shinji nonchalantly climbed down the ladder. Below was complete darkness. Shinji flicked another switch. "Whoa!" breathed Kensuke. It was cleaner, was the first thing he noticed. It was a room as big as all of upstairs, and its sides were occupied by large machinery. Kensuke recognised metal lathes, saws, moulds, various other items of manufacture. There were ready work tables, even raw materials packed in crates. "What is this place?" he asked. Shinji smiled but was hesitant. The store above was supposed to be a gun shop. Kensuke nearly had a heart attack. "A what?" He looked around again. Everything seemed infinitely more awesome. "This is great! Who used to own this place?" I should have bought my camera. No, making records of your misdeeds is never a good idea." The young teen ran over the room, fondling, for lack of a better term, the sleek metal of the fabricators. After quite some time, he realised Shinji hadn't answered his question, and asked again. "Nobody. I had this built a few weeks ago." Kensuke clutched his heart and fell over. "Kensuke!" "How?" The glasses-wearing teen muttered numbly. He lifted his head to look down. "Shinji, since when did you have enough money to throw around just to have something like this built? And why?" "Not that I don't like it, but..." "Damn, man! Just when I thought you couldn't be a more awesome friend, you pull something like this." Instead of answering, Shinji sat on one of the workbenches. He stared off into space. After a few more minutes, he asked as well, Kensuke, want to hear a story? Dude, I'm not a little... Okay. He got up and scooted over. They sat facing each other there, in a cross-legs position like two samurai discussing old and new wars. This serious air made Kensuke ignore the shooting pain in his ankles. And there, Shinji began his story. It was the story of war and science. It was the dark age of technology. Shinji told him about the warp storms isolating humanity. He spoke of Mars and its technology conserved through pain and sacrifice. He spoke of its tech priests and their worship of technology. He spoke of the arrival of the Emperor and his warriors. He spoke of the armoured Star Knights for his great crusade, liberating and bringing together the scattered colonies of man, long isolated in the dark reaches of the galaxy. He spoke of the Adeptus Mechanicus. He spoke of their works and their marvels. He spoke of the Space Marines and the blessed suits they wore into battle. He spoke of the powered suits. He spoke of the Terminator armour. He spoke of dreadnoughts and how even until death the faithful of the Emperor would still serve. Neither knew for how long they talked, as Kensuke asked for more and more clarifications on the things he'd heard. Even without seeing examples, he could find a way to visualise them. In fact, having no clear idea of what Shinji was talking about, they seemed even more remote and massive as the mountains. In the end, Shinji reached into his pocket and put a miniature between them. It was the Space Marine. The light flickered, and it looked as if the figure had twitched its chainsword in salute. Here I ask you now, Kensuke, what would you rather do? Wear that armour into battle, or make that armour? Kensuke reached over to pick up the Space Marine and stopped. He stared at his own spindly wrists. His vision was blurred. Were those tears misting up his glasses? It was nothing but a toy. But the way Shinji said of it, it was like hearing holy scripture from a holy man. It was something endless and epic. He wanted it. Kensuke felt like all his doubts had lifted. It was simple. He'd simply been born in the wrong time. He closed his hand into a fist. I'd like to make it. How would it have felt? To craft such power, to know that while others might fight and die, without you the entire war effort would grind to a halt. Shinji quickly scooped up the Space Marine and stood up. Kensuke made a hey of protest. The pilot went over to a large empty display case. He reached into it and pushed a stub somewhere. The display case opened up like a book. No way. No freaking way. Kensuke leapt to his feet and stood beside him, his face full of wonder and delight. A secret entrance? Shinji grinned. He stepped inside to reveal a simple but small elevator. The two descended. Your father's a powerful man, Kensuke. Dad? But he's an accountant. Remember that soldiers cannot fight without bullets. Tanks cannot roll on without metal. It's your father's valuable support that keeps nerve moving. Shinji smiled, his face somewhat pained. I envy you and told you, You have fathers that are at least worthy of being called that. But Shinji, this trifle? Do you think I dug it out with my bare hands? Did I lay down the concrete on my own? No, this isn't mine. It's you who stand around me that give me power. And it's for you that I had this safe house built. I can fight the angels, but I can't protect my friends from the designs of man. Man, Shinji? You think we're going to be in danger from other people? Of course. It's inevitable. I must thank your father. It was he that found this long-forgotten section of Tokyo free with an abandoned undersection going into the geofront. The city planners just built over it. The elevator opened and the two stepped out to something unassuming. It looked just like a normal apartment. There was a bed, a refrigerator, a sink, some tall metal dressers, and several more doors. That door over there leads all the way across the street to a closed bookstore on the other side. The owner's someone I know, but to everyone he's just on vacation. I've already arranged for you to be employed and set to sign for new books and fix up the shelves. What you're really going to be doing is receive packages from the mail, and sometimes from other kids. Kensuke, I'd like you to secretly prepare this place. This safe house is only safe if no one knows about it. Therefore, you should only enter from that bookstore over there. Never let the store above be associated with you or anyone I know. There are a few more entrances. That door leads to another alley, out through a ventilation shaft. That door over there goes into the Tokyo Free sewer line. That one on the floor goes to a passageway into the geofront itself. There's a blocked hatch somewhere, but my access key should be enough to get past it. Shinji shook his head, amazed too. Kensuke, your father's awesome. Now I know where you get your information gathering skills from. He picked out the perfect place, and I'm sure that he can keep it hidden from Nerve. What about those who built this place? Aren't they a security risk too? They're dispersed across several cities now in their new work orders. Besides, as far as they know, this place isn't for me, but some other Tokyo Free nutcase. The only ones who know so far about this place is your father, me, and you. Kensuke stepped aside, fearful. He knew Shinji moved in a different world than the other teens of his age, but this... I don't know, man. It seems too big. I'm not sure I can handle it. He squeezed his eyes shut. I'll mess up. I always mess up. Shinji put his hands back in his pockets again and lifted a fist up to Kensuke's face. The other teen opened his eyes and flinched. He couldn't see anything beyond that fist. You can do it, Kensuke. For the sake of all you know, you will, when needed, find the strength and the courage you search for. Greatness is built on lesser things, and in day-to-day you will find your own glory. That fist opened, and in it was another figurine, garbed in a white robe. It held a long staff that tried to be a gun, a key, and an axe all simultaneously. Its expression was weary, but still unwilling to rest. Let me tell you, and with it at his face like that, it seemed as if the voice came from it, about the Titans. At the end of it, Kensuke was openly sobbing. No matter how big the Titans were, they all started from the efforts of small mortal men. The great machine stands on its own, but also exalts those who built it. Shinji took Kensuke's right hand and opened it. He put the Adeptus Mechanicus on his palm. Shinji, I can't. There's more I need for you to do, Kensuke. Will you help me? The school geek closed his fingers around the figurine, and light glinted off his glasses. By the grace of the machine spirit, I will succeed. What would you have me do? I want you to get the plans from Toji's father and build me a man-sized bolter. You have the tools. There's bound to be a few operators' manuals around here somewhere. Don't worry about the ammunition for a while. Kensuke keeled over, unconscious. Shinji shook his head, amused. He picked up his friend and laid him out on the bed. How could someone be so simple and yet so complex? He'd guessed right. It was not that Kensuke searched for a war out of the wish to end his mortal life in the Grand Ray, but shouted out against his own flawed mortality. He needed purpose, something greater than himself, something monumental to strive for, to be happy. He scribbled a few more instructions on a pad of paper, left the duplicate keys and went out. He owned 5 properties in Tokyo Free. 3 were bought for him by the Hokos, and 2 were provided by the JSSDF. There was yet still more work to be done before he could sleep. These were the days of Maya Ibuki in Tokyo Free. She still idolized her senpai, but found herself visiting more and more Misato Katsuragi's apartment. The others were on an open invitation, but Makoto was too embarrassed to visit without an official reason. Shigeru visited only once, but afterwards said something about it not really being his scene. Shin-chan! Maya's here! It's almost ready, Misato-san. Besides, it was cheaper than going to a restaurant. Maya chipped in with the food expenses and did the groceries when Misato was too busy or Shinji just too likely to get mobbed. Rah! Hello, Pen-Pen, Maya responded cheerily. Look, I got fish-shaped biscuits. The penguin bowed and took the open pack of snacks from her. It no longer disturbed her that not only could the penguin understand her speech, she was starting to know what those little racks could mean. Misato was dressed more conservatively, having just come from Shinji's parent-teacher conference. She was, of course, drinking beer. Maya frowned disapprovingly at her, having gone far in her courage with the captain. Sure, back at Nerve she was still shy and deferring, but in the casual atmosphere of the apartment she seemed the more mature. You're becoming more and more like Rich-chan every day, moaned Misato. Maya looked away and blushed. There was one thing her senpai did that she hadn't done, and it wasn't to sleep with Gendo. What do you think of Shinji? Huh? Maya saw Misato was again in serious mode. Does he seem happy to you? She put the can to her head as like a cold compress. People in school are just gushing on and on about him, but in the end it looks like there's only 3 people he knows. This is a teenager's dream and he's avoiding it.
That's how popular Shinji-kun is. He wasn't doing it to be popular. Damn, it's just not healthy to suppress your own ego like that. Oh, thank you, Pen.
She made a conscious decision not to think about how a penguin could have possibly managed to pour tea for her. Maya took a sip.
And what do you think he should be doing, Misato-senpai? He should be out there milking it for all it's got. He should have statues made of him. Wherever he should walk, there should be entire legions of screaming fangirls.
Misato stood up and pointed with her can of yabisu.
He should be living like a king, and I should be right there being pampered along. Please stop predicting your own inadequacies on him, Misato-senpai.
Misato saw back down and growled.
Too much like Ritz-chan.
Maya simply closed her eyes and all too calmly took another sip of her tea. That was when Shinji arrived. It was hot pot time. Yay! Once it was done, Misato formally laid her chopsticks down, stood up and shouted,
I can't take it anymore!
She put one foot on the table and leaned over to jab a finger at Shinji's forehead.
You've been cooped up in here for weeks, cooking and cleaning and working on whatever that is you have up on the roof. You need to get out there and enjoy life. Be a man. You're acting like a wife, damn it.
But Misato-san,
no, Shinji, I've had enough.
She took another deep swig of liquid courage.
I won't have you try and pretend to be happy for my sake. You need to get in touch with others and find out what else in this city you protect that can make you happy.
Shinji chuckled lightly. Isn't that ironic? With all the trouble he went to set up the happiness of those he considered his precious people, so was Misato-san trying to set him up with a girl. Any girl. Except herself. Well, if that'll make you happy. He nodded. All right. Would you please go out with me, Maya-san? Misato spurted her beer all over Pen. The penguin made drowning motions. It warbled on as if to say, Damn it, you stupid woman, I'm an air breather.
Me?
Maya eeped.
Should you go with Ray? Won't you think bad of this?
Shinji shook his head. Ray understands well. You also know that we were forever seen together. The media would be all over us. She's kinda distinctive.
Woo-hoo-hoo!
Misato waved her hands up in the air.
That's it, Shin-chan. You the man. Take the initiative.
She stopped and looked pointedly at Maya.
Don't make me make it an official order, Maya-chan. Not that I mind, Shinji-kun, but what about other girls your age?
He shrugged. Who? You're about one of the few girls I can really talk to. Hiraki-san's already going out with Toji. Any other girl would be expecting too much, or be out talking to the reporters.
You don't really like reporters, do you, Shinji-kun?
They are necessary, but they're an impolite people. He shrugged again.
All right, that's it. You two are going out right now.
Misato pointed at Maya.
You, stay. I think I've got a few things I can lend you.
Maybe also borrow those riding glasses you have, Misato-san?
Sure,
she chuckled evilly.
Let's make it sporty.
They were shoved out the door. Maya was dressed in a tight leather jacket and had her hair combed out into two curvy loops going under her chin to frame her cheeks. She had on thick red lipstick and eyeshadow. Shinji had on jeans and another black jacket, his hair combed down and fixed with gel. Both wore sunglasses. Maya started. Please relax, Sabuki-san. You're in control here. Where do you think we should go?
If so, then please call me Maya, Shinji-kun.
All right, Maya-chan. He grinned under his baseball cap. The young woman turned and looked wide-eyed at him. Today we are not Shinji Ikari and Maya Ibuki. We're just perfectly normal people with perfectly normal concerns. We don't think about saving the world. We just go and be happy in our perfectly normal lives. Eh, Maya-san? She nodded. Shinji winced as they went outside. It's like it's been so long since I walked in daylight. Maya's smile faltered. Poor Shinji-kun. This is poor reward for saving the world. They walked out, and out on the street, Shinji turned back and shook his head. He was still smiling amusedly. Who is Ibuki, Maya? He asked. You don't look like Ibuki-san.
What do you mean?
Ibuki-san walks like that, but you don't look like her. He began to walk around in a definite swagger, still with a forced grin. We're different people today. Others will look at us and see someone else. You're a beautiful young woman, confident, with pride. Today's your day, Maya-san. The nerve lieutenant giggled. Even with just such flimsy disguise, Shinji seemed like a totally different person. Just by changing his body language, born of his talent for observing others, he made himself the utter opposite of what people would expect to see from Shinji. If Maya hadn't known beforehand, she too would have sworn it wasn't young Akari. Gone was the seriousness. Gone was the careful premeditation. For once, he seemed the young man he really was. She took a deep breath and began to walk. Confident. Everything that Myrabuki is not, she told herself.
There's a fair today, Shinji-kun.
Shy old Maya expected the usual things. Dinner, movie. The new her wanted something childish and unexpected. Shinji smiled wide. I've never been to a fair. Was it really a date? Maya saw that their height difference wasn't all that much. And she felt so young. It was just two souls, too long deep, entangled in their duties, now set free. Tokyo 3 had many reasons to be happy. It's been a long time since the last angel attack, and the city had finally been completely rebuilt. People were even moving back in. They partook of that happiness, lost themselves in the innocent joys of the day. While waiting in line for the Ferris wheel, Maya saw a man with a camera approaching.
Oh no,
she thought.
Please don't notice us.
Hey, look! Shinji picked up an empty drink can, a paper box, and a rock from the ground. He grinned at her and began to juggle, or at least tried to. Damn it! He huffed as he missed at the first try. He tried again. The empty can hit him on the nose. Ugh! He moaned. Sorry. Maya giggled out loud. The man smiled a bit, shook his head, and went away. No, these were just two young teens in love. Shinji Ikari, as everyone knows, was unattached and was as forged of the ancient legends. He was a boy larger than life, not someone so foolish and so eager to grab a girl's attention. Shinji exhaled. That was close.
So it really works?
Whispered Maya. Be what they expect to see and you can predict what they'll believe, was his same whispered response. People are never really persuaded. They only convince themselves. Up at the Ferris wheel, she asked,
And what is it that you think I want to see? What are you being for me, Shinji-kun?
Whatever you need me to be, Maya-san. She turned aside and looked at the setting sun over Tokyo 3.
I can't accept that. Masato-senpai was right. You can't be happy this way.
My happiness is your happiness. It's very important to me. She touched her hand to the grilled glass panels.
It's a sad world we live in, isn't it?
It's all we have. These were the nights in Tokyo 3. It was a large city that, despite the attacks, was still home to nearly 1 million people. They'd spent at least a decade building it. They'd invested too much time, money, hopes and hearts to leave it so easily. They rebuilt and endured. Of course, in any given city, there would always be those who took the easy way, the disaffected, the discontent, the disorderly. Crime was a fact of life in any metropolis.
Let go, she cried. Please, let me go.
They laughed at her. There were 4. They were scarred and looking tough, most likely out-of-work construction workers. 2 held her back while the other pair looked through her purse. By their easy movements, this was something they had plenty of practice in. She made as if to scream again, but was punched in the gut. She began to cough and retch. This is it? One of the thugs licked at his thumb and counted the thin wad of money. That, her necklace and her wedding ring were all the spoils they had. I guess we'll make it worth out of you then. He leered as he looked up and down at her, pinned there to the wall. She was afraid, but she couldn't scream again. She could only look on in horror as they gathered around her.
What are you doing?
All turned, and there at the brighter end of the alley stood a girl, a teen, still in her school uniform. She had pale blue hair and deep red eyes. Again she asked,
What are you doing?
Get out of here and keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you, spat one of the thugs. The girl tilted her head to the side.
Am I to assume that you are not a willing participant in this? She asked the woman. Have you taken her belongings? What do you intend to do with her?
You're a mouthy one, ain't you? Hey, she's a pretty little thing too, said another.
I see. Then I shall assume you intend to rape her, and perhaps me as well.
And she smiled. Shit, she's gonna run! Get her! She rushed forwards instead, and whispered under her breath. Was that a panty? Blood spurted out of one thug's nose, mostly because she just kicked him in the jaw. The girl made a lazy spin in midair and drove her knee into the side of his head. That thug crashed to the ground, out of the fight. She landed in a half-crouch. Her smile had grown a fraction wider. What the fuck? Kill this bitch! The three remaining thugs attacked as one, forgetting entirely about their other captive. The girl ducked aside a punch and lashed out with an elbow to the chest. That one there stepped back, coughing. One of the other would-be rapists threw a large piece of wood at her. She bent forwards and kicked back with her right leg. Thus, as the heavy projectile passed her head, it met the heel of her foot and spun back to strike the very one who threw it on his nose. He gave out a scream as a loose nail punctured through into the nasal cavity. Blood dripped, and she grinned. They came at her with sticks and knives. She evaded their attacks with all the grace of a dancer, and as she struck out with hands and feet, there seemed to glimmer a faint red. Big, strong men flew through the air to smack at the walls with resounding force. She kicked down and sent them smashing into the ground. One was trying to get away. She stomped on his hand as he tried to crawl behind her. She was grinning openly now. She looked up at the moon and closed her eyes. A chill wind passed through the alley. Then she turned to the woman she just rescued. "Stay away from me!" the woman shrieked.
"You have nothing to fear from me. Are you well?"
She nodded slightly, her red eyes still as if glowing with their own inner light.
"Please take your belongings and call for the authority. These grots will not be going anywhere."
Who are you?"
"Who am I?"
She looked up at the moon again. She took deep breaths, though the effort in combat could hardly even make her sweat.
"I am
Her grin showed some teeth.
dangerous."
It was not the only time Maya and Shinji went out. Together they were almost as if invisible. It freed Shinji to go out in daytime, and Maya was happy to help him in that. They had fun, and they tried for no romance. It would complicate things needlessly. They found a department store that remained open until late at night. They favoured that spot, and the store manager was entirely too willing to cooperate in keeping their visit secret from the public. Only in there, and with almost no one else around, could Shinji feel safe enough to take off his cap and glasses. He waited for Maya as she went off to the bathroom. He smiled. Perhaps he could get to really like Maya-san. He never expected her to be so vibrant, so full of energy. She was full of enthusiasm, approaching things in a way that was all new, and at the same time without ignorance. He felt two men approach from behind him. "Mr. Akari, may we talk?" "Damn it. How many times do I have to tell you people I'm not him?" He lolled back his head. "I read his crap so I don't have to go through the same hassle he does." They had black suits and sunglasses. However, Shinji had a feeling they weren't part of Section 2. "Let's not play games, Mr. Akari. We have Miss Ibuki. It would be best if you came with us without a fuss." He frowned. What the hell happened to his Section 2 guards? He had no illusions about being able to escape his father's guards unless they deliberately let him loose. So dead. Maya's safety can't be assured. This was the very thing he had prepared for. However, he'd always anticipated they would strike first at his friends rather than him directly. A kidnapping in broad... well, moonlight? Crude. Very crude. He nodded. He followed. The crudest approaches are the ones that often work best, despite all preparations. However, he'd made plans for such an emergency. He kept his hands well out of his pockets. He sneezed and rubbed his nose with the tip of his jacket as he saw they were being watchful. Somewhere under Tokyo 3, a recorder switched on.